Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Stellar HFY. First of all, thank you seriously. The incredible support you've been showing for our economic warfare stories has been absolutely phenomenal. Today, we're diving into something that will completely flip your understanding of what makes a civilization truly powerful. Picture this: 43 advanced alien species look at Earth and see nothing but a primitive backwater, cheap labor, basic manufacturing, perfect for economic exploitation. But what happens when the primitive species reveals they've been outproducing the entire galactic economy this whole time? Let's begin. We built our industrial independence on a simple principle that most galactic civilizations never quite understand. True economic freedom doesn't come from joining established trade networks. It comes from building your own production capacity so comprehensive that you don't need anyone else's markets to survive. I'm Captain Victor Blackwood, and I've spent the last 12 years watching Earth transform from a resource importing backwater into the most self-sufficient manufacturing civilization in known space. The economic ultimatum arrived through standard diplomatic channels at 0900 hours station time. 72 hours to accept resource extraction quotas and manufacturing limitations that would keep Earth's industrial output at levels the Galactic Commerce Federation considered appropriate for developing civilizations. I was reviewing production reports at Proxima Industrial Station when the message came through, stamped with the economic seals of 43 different species I'd been tracking through our trade intelligence networks. Let me tell you something about those production reports. They weren't just numbers on data screens. For 12 years, every facility, every manufacturing line, every resource extraction operation had been designed around one critical principle. Never again would humanity depend on someone else's economic goodwill for survival. My friend Admiral Lucas Thorne, overseeing Earth's Industrial Defense Corps, had been sending increasingly concerned briefings about Federation economic surveillance in our outer systems. Victor, Thorne had told me during our last secure communication, their economic analysts are calling our manufacturing growth unsustainable for a developing civilization. They think we're producing beyond our natural capacity and need their oversight to prevent market disruption. That's the thing about the Federation's economic philosophy that nobody in human space could stomach. They didn't see manufacturing capacity. They saw market share that needed regulation. They didn't see industrial innovation. They saw developing civilizations that required management. Most critically, they assumed that rapid industrial growth meant economic instability rather than technological breakthrough. The Federation represented 43 species who'd built their prosperity on controlling trade networks through economic treaties and dependency relationships. Their standard approach was elegant in its simplicity: identify developing civilizations with valuable resources, offer advanced technology and trade access in exchange for resource extraction rights, then gradually increase economic dependency until the developing species couldn't function without Federation trade relationships. For most civilizations, this system worked exactly as designed. Species that accepted Federation economic partnerships got access to advanced technology and galactic markets. In exchange, they gave up economic independence and accepted production limitations that kept them dependent on Federation trade for essential goods and services. But Earth's situation was different from the beginning, and the Federation's economic intelligence had completely misunderstood why. 12 years ago, when humanity first encountered galactic civilization, we'd made a decision that puzzled every economic analyst in Federation space. Instead of joining established trade networks for access to advanced technology, we'd used our initial contact period to analyze Federation economic methods and concluded that trade dependency was a trap we couldn't afford. Commander Vel Caris of the Federation Economic Authority had transmitted his assessment along with the ultimatum. Human industrial development shows classic patterns of unsustainable expansion beyond natural resource capacity. Species requires Federation economic oversight to prevent manufacturing collapse and ensure stable integration into galactic trade networks. Thorne had forwarded me that assessment with a single comment: they still think we're trying to join their economy instead of replacing it. The Federation looked at Earth's industrial growth and saw dangerous overexpansion that needed regulation. What they didn't understand was that our overexpansion was actually comprehensive preparation for economic independence. Every manufacturing facility they cataloged as evidence of unsustainable growth was actually part of a carefully coordinated program to eliminate trade dependency. We'd spent 12 years building what Federation economists considered impossible: complete industrial self-sufficiency across every critical manufacturing sector. Not just resource extraction and basic production, but advanced technology manufacturing, precision engineering, and sophisticated material science that matched or exceeded Federation capabilities. The key was our location in what galactic civilization considered an economic backwater, a resource-rich stellar region outside established trade routes where we could develop industrial capabilities without interference or oversight. What looked like isolation to Federation analysts was actually the perfect environment for comprehensive industrial development. Victor, Thorne had explained during the early years of our industrial program, the Federation controls civilizations through economic dependency. They provide advanced technology in exchange for resource extraction rights, then gradually increase dependency until species can't function without Federation trade. But if we can achieve technological parity through independent development, we eliminate their economic leverage completely, I'd finished. They can't control what they can't make dependent. That 12-year development program had been the most comprehensive industrial undertaking in human history. We'd analyzed Federation technology, reverse engineered their manufacturing processes, and developed independent production capabilities that could match their industrial output without requiring their trade networks. But we'd been careful to make our industrial development look primitive to Federation observers. Our manufacturing facilities used techniques that appeared less sophisticated than Federation methods while actually achieving superior efficiency. Our resource extraction operations looked like basic mining while actually representing advanced materials processing that exceeded Federation capabilities. The Federation intelligence reports classified Earth as a developing manufacturing species with limited technological sophistication, suitable for supervised industrial development. They saw primitive facilities producing basic goods rather than recognizing innovative approaches to production efficiency that their own economic theories couldn't accommodate. As the ultimatum deadline approached, I found myself reviewing 12 years of industrial development reports and marveling at what we'd accomplished. Earth had transformed from resource importers to the most comprehensively self-sufficient civilization in known space, all while maintaining the appearance of primitive development to avoid attracting the kind of attention we were now receiving. Thorne's final intelligence brief arrived 18 hours before the deadline. Federation enforcement fleets deploying to 12 human systems simultaneously. They're planning coordinated economic pressure operations using standard dependency creation protocols. I transmitted back a simple response. Understood. Time to show them why we spent 12 years building independence instead of dependence. The Federation was about to discover the difference between a civilization that needed galactic trade networks and a civilization that had designed itself to make those networks irrelevant. They'd looked at Earth and seen a primitive backwater suitable for economic exploitation. We were about to show them what 12 years of necessity-driven innovation could accomplish when a species decided that economic independence was worth any price in development costs and industrial investment. The Federation's first mistake was thinking Wolf 359 would be easy economic pressure. I wasn't there personally. I was coordinating industrial intelligence from Proxima Station, but I watched the whole enforcement action through real-time production feeds. And let me tell you, it was educational for everyone involved. Wolf 359 had been established 8 years earlier as a heavy manufacturing hub, one of those industrial complexes that made Federation economists think humanity was overextending beyond sustainable capacity. What their economic intelligence hadn't recognized was that Wolf 359's primitive manufacturing facilities were actually the most advanced production networks in human space, capable of rapid reconfiguration from civilian manufacturing to defensive systems. Commander Valkaris led the economic enforcement personally, bringing 40 ships to demonstrate what Federation doctrine called proportional economic pressure against what he expected to be a dependent manufacturing colony that would collapse without access to galactic trade networks. His standard approach was textbook economic control: establish blockade positions, cut off trade routes, begin systematic interdiction of resource shipments until local authorities agreed to Federation oversight. The first sign something was wrong came when his enforcement fleet established blockade positions and found Wolf 359 continuing normal manufacturing operations without any apparent concern about trade restrictions. No desperate attempts to negotiate, no frantic communications with Earth asking for instructions, no reduction in industrial output despite being cut off from supposed supply networks. Industrial Administrator, this is Federation Economic Authority Commander Vel Karis, he broadcast on commercial frequencies. Your manufacturing operations are in violation of sustainable development protocols. You have 6 hours to reduce production to acceptable levels and prepare for Federation economic oversight. The response came from what appeared to be the facility's production coordinator. Federation Forces, this is Wolf 359 Industrial Command. We have implemented defensive manufacturing protocols and shifted to independent resource utilization. Your blockade has no effect on our production capabilities. Velkaris's reaction, recorded in his tactical logs, was exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd spent his career controlling developing civilizations through economic pressure. Independent resource utilization? These primitive manufacturers think they can operate without galactic trade networks? That's when Wolf 359 showed him what 12 years of industrial independence actually looked like in practice. The manufacturing facilities that Federation intelligence had dismissed as basic production equipment suddenly revealed their true capabilities when defensive protocols activated. What had appeared to be standard industrial machinery was actually advanced manufacturing systems capable of producing defensive equipment in real time. Resource processing centers that seemed designed for civilian production started manufacturing military-grade materials with efficiency that exceeded Federation industrial capacity. Most critically, those primitive transport vessels, moving materials throughout the system, revealed themselves as sophisticated logistics networks capable of rapid reconfiguration to support defensive operations while maintaining full manufacturing output. The engagement lasted 6 days and taught both sides lessons they hadn't expected to learn. Velkaris's first interdiction wave targeted what his economic analysts identified as critical supply shipments: resource convoys, component deliveries, finished goods transport. What he discovered was that Wolf 359 didn't depend on external supply networks in ways Federation economic theory considered possible for developing civilizations. This is impossible, Velkaris transmitted to his fleet after the first day of interdiction had achieved no reduction in manufacturing output. Economic intelligence reported standard trade dependency patterns. These facilities are operating without external resource inputs. His economic analysis officer's response, intercepted through our trade intelligence networks, showed the Federation's growing confusion. Sir, our blockade systems are detecting resource extraction and processing at levels that suggest complete industrial self-sufficiency. This contradicts all our assessments of human technological capabilities. That was exactly right. Wolf 359's industrial complex was completely self-sufficient because it had been designed that way from the beginning. The Federation's economic theories couldn't accommodate the possibility that a developing civilization could achieve comprehensive industrial independence without centuries of gradual technological development through trade relationships. The Federation's second mistake was assuming that effective economic pressure required visible dependency relationships. Velkaris kept waiting for Wolf 359's manufacturing output to decline as supply restrictions took effect. Resource shortages, component scarcities, production bottlenecks that would force negotiation. What he got instead was a manufacturing complex that operated at full capacity regardless of external trade restrictions, producing not just civilian goods, but defensive equipment that his enforcement fleet wasn't prepared to encounter. Thorne had been monitoring the engagement from Earth Command, and his industrial analysis was brutally accurate. Velkaris is trying to pressure a manufacturing facility that doesn't need external trade to function. He doesn't understand that our industrial independence means his economic leverage doesn't exist. By the fourth day, Federation losses were mounting in ways that violated their assumptions about human industrial capabilities. Manufacturing facilities were producing defensive systems faster than enforcement operations could interdict them. Industrial logistics networks were supporting defensive operations with coordination that suggested sophisticated command and control systems integrated into civilian production infrastructure. Most frustrating for Valkaris, his economic pressure operations were taking steady losses, while Wolf 359's manufacturing output showed no signs of reduction or dependency on external trade networks. Admiral Thorne, I transmitted through secure channels. How effective is their economic pressure? Completely ineffective, Victor. Wolf 359 is running at 112% of normal production capacity. They're not just maintaining output despite the blockade, they're actually producing more goods than before enforcement began. That was the thing about our industrial independence that the Federation couldn't grasp. Our manufacturing facilities weren't designed to impress galactic economists with visible trade relationships. They were designed to function completely independently of external economic networks while achieving production efficiency that exceeded Federation capabilities. Valkaris's tactical logs from the final day of enforcement operations showed his growing realization that he'd fundamentally misunderstood what he was trying to control. Human industrial doctrine appears based on comprehensive self-sufficiency rather than trade network integration. Standard economic pressure protocols show no effect on manufacturing output. Species demonstrates industrial capabilities beyond our economic intelligence assessments. He was learning what every economic analyst who'd studied human development had missed. Our industrial growth wasn't unsustainable overexpansion. It was carefully planned achievement of complete economic independence that made Federation trade relationships unnecessary rather than desirable. When the Federation enforcement fleet finally withdrew from Wolf 359, they'd lost 18 ships and achieved none of their economic objectives. The manufacturing complex continued operating at full capacity. Its production networks remained completely independent of galactic trade, and its defensive capabilities had proven superior to Federation enforcement equipment. Thorne's post-engagement analysis was succinct. They came expecting to pressure a dependent manufacturing colony. They found an industrial complex that's been designed for complete economic independence for 8 years. And Victor, Wolf 359 isn't even our most advanced manufacturing facility. As reports of the engagement spread through Federation economic networks, I could see the fundamental problem they were facing. They'd built their entire economic control strategy around assumptions about trade dependency that were proving false under actual enforcement conditions. Thorne, I transmitted, what's your assessment of Federation economic adaptation? They're not adapting, Victor. They're escalating. Valkaris is requesting additional enforcement assets for comprehensive economic intervention operations. They still think this is about insufficient pressure rather than impossible objectives. That's when I understood we weren't dealing with an economic miscalculation that could be corrected through demonstration. We were dealing with a fundamental misunderstanding so deep that only complete failure of their economic control systems would convince them to reconsider. The Federation was about to get exactly the industrial education they demanded. Thorne's comprehensive economic assessment arrived at my desk 96 hours after the Wolf 359 enforcement action ended, and reading it was like watching someone perform an autopsy on a failed economic theory. The Federation hadn't just lost ships, they'd exposed fundamental flaws in their understanding of industrial development that went back centuries of successful economic control. Victor, Thorne's secure transmission began, I've analyzed every aspect of Federation economic doctrine from the Wolf 359 engagement, and their problems go deeper than tactical miscalculation. They're using economic control methods designed for trade-dependent civilizations against an industrial system they fundamentally don't understand. The economic briefing that followed was the most thorough industrial analysis I'd seen in 12 years of development oversight. Thorne had mapped every Federation economic pressure technique against human industrial responses, and the pattern was devastatingly clear. Valkaris's enforcement operations were using dependency creation doctrine designed for controlling primitive manufacturing, not engaging comprehensive industrial independence that had been refined through over a decade of strategic development. Their fundamental error, Thorne explained during our encrypted video conference, is assuming that industrial capacity requires external trade relationships. They expect developing civilizations to need galactic supply networks, advanced technology imports, and market access for finished goods. But our industrial independence philosophy inverts that entire economic model. Thorne transmitted production diagrams showing how human manufacturing actually functioned during economic pressure operations. What looked like standard industrial facilities was actually integrated production networks where every component served multiple manufacturing purposes. Resource extraction wasn't just raw material procurement. It was comprehensive material science that could produce any required component internally. Manufacturing equipment wasn't just production machinery. It was adaptive systems capable of rapid reconfiguration for any required output. The Federation keeps waiting for us to reveal our real economic dependencies, Thorne continued, because they can't conceive of industrial systems that genuinely don't require external trade networks. They're looking for supply bottlenecks, resource shortages, technology gaps, while fighting manufacturing capabilities that were specifically designed to eliminate all external dependencies. But what really concerned Thorne wasn't the Federation's economic failures. It was their response to those failures. Intelligence intercepts showed Velcaris requesting massive expansion of enforcement operations across 22 human manufacturing systems simultaneously. They're not learning from Wolf 359, Thorne warned. They're escalating. Velcaris thinks 18 lost ships means he didn't apply enough economic pressure. Not that his entire approach is economically impossible against our industrial model. That's when Thorne proposed Operation Market Force, a coordinated demonstration designed to show the Federation exactly what 12 years of comprehensive industrial development looked like when deployed across our entire manufacturing network simultaneously. We can't let them attack our industrial systems individually, Thorne explained. Every engagement teaches them more about our capabilities while allowing them to concentrate overwhelming economic pressure against isolated facilities. But if we coordinate industrial demonstrations across 22 systems simultaneously, you're talking about revealing our complete manufacturing capacity, I interrupted. Once we show them what we can really produce, there's no maintaining the illusion that we're a primitive, developing civilization. Thorne's expression was grim. Victor, they're going to discover our industrial capabilities anyway. The question is whether we let them do it by systematically pressuring our facilities one at a time, or whether we show them all at once in a way that makes continued economic pressure obviously pointless. The plan Thorne outlined was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. Instead of waiting for Federation forces to apply economic pressure to individual manufacturing systems, we would coordinate industrial demonstrations across 22 facilities the moment Federation enforcement fleets entered those systems. Not to initiate economic warfare, but to demonstrate the full scope of human industrial capabilities before economic pressure became economically unsustainable for the Federation itself. Every manufacturing facility reveals its true production capacity. Every resource extraction operation displays its comprehensive materials science. Every logistics network demonstrates its adaptive coordination capabilities, all at once across 22 systems, so they understand they're not facing developing industrial colonies. They're facing the most advanced manufacturing civilization in known space. The personal moment came when Thorne asked the question I'd been considering for days. Victor, do you think we're making the right choice? 12 years of successful development through strategic obscurity, and we're about to abandon that approach for a demonstration that might provoke the very economic war we've been trying to avoid. I thought about that for a long time. Our industrial independence had worked for 12 years precisely because galactic economists could never be sure what our manufacturing capabilities actually were. Federation analysts avoided serious economic pressure against human systems because some facilities had shown unexpected capabilities, not because they understood that all human industrial development was designed for complete independence. Thorne, the Federation has already decided on economic control. Their intelligence failures at Wolf 359 haven't changed their strategic objectives. They've just convinced them they need more comprehensive pressure operations. We can either let them learn our capabilities through systematic economic warfare, or we can teach them through coordinated demonstration. And if the demonstration provokes other civilizations into forming counter-alliances, if showing our true industrial capabilities makes us look like an economic threat rather than a developing civilization that's simply well-prepared, that was the real question. For 12 years, humanity had maintained peaceful development through strategic ambiguity. We were clearly industrially capable, but nobody knew exactly how capable. The Federation was forcing us to abandon that ambiguity, and once we did, every civilization in the galaxy would have to reassess their economic relationship with humanity. Thorn, look at their enforcement deployment, massive fleet concentrations, 22 systems, coordinated economic pressure operations designed to force comprehensive trade dependency. That's not economic negotiation or market integration. That's attempted economic conquest based on the assumption that we can't maintain industrial independence against systematic pressure. Thorn nodded slowly. Operation Market Force it is. How long do you need to coordinate with manufacturing facility commands? 72 hours to ensure all systems are ready for coordinated demonstration. But Thorn, once we do this, there's no going back to peaceful development through industrial obscurity. Every civilization in the galaxy will know exactly what human manufacturing capabilities look like. Maybe that's not a bad thing, Victor. Maybe 12 years of hidden industrial development was the right approach for building our manufacturing base, but the wrong approach for protecting it against systematic economic pressure from civilizations that view our independence as a threat to their control systems. The preparation phase took exactly 72 hours and revealed the true scope of what humanity had built over 12 years of comprehensive industrial development. Manufacturing facilities across 22 systems confirmed readiness to demonstrate production capabilities that had been concealed behind primitive appearances for nearly a decade. Resource extraction operations verified material science techniques that could produce any required component without external supply networks. Logistics systems activated coordination protocols that could manage industrial operations across interstellar distances with efficiency that exceeded Federation economic theories. Most impressively, every facility confirmed ability to maintain full production output while demonstrating defensive capabilities that would make economic pressure operations prohibitively expensive for any enforcement fleet. Federation intelligence, meanwhile, was reporting exactly what we expected. Human industrial preparations appear consistent with previous observations of primitive manufacturing development. Recommend proceeding with comprehensive economic pressure operations as planned. Vel Karras's final pre-enforcement transmission to his expanded fleet showed he'd learned nothing from Wolf 359. All enforcement groups prepare for coordinated economic pressure operations. Expect standard trade dependency patterns from developing manufacturing colonies. Maintain systematic pressure protocols for maximum economic impact. As I watch Federation enforcement fleets move into position around 22 human manufacturing systems, I realize we were about to provide the most comprehensive economic education in galactic history. The Federation had asked if we were serious about industrial independence. They were about to find out that we'd spent 12 years getting very serious about making their economic control systems completely irrelevant. At 0800 hours Earth Standard Time, humanity showed the galaxy what 12 years of comprehensive industrial development actually looked like when deployed without concealment across our entire manufacturing network. I was coordinating from Proxima Station, watching economic displays light up like celebration fireworks as production capabilities that had been hidden behind primitive appearances revealed themselves simultaneously across 22 star systems. The Federation enforcement fleets had arrived expecting to face developing industrial colonies dependent on galactic trade networks for essential resources and advanced technology. What they encountered instead was the coordinated demonstration of integrated manufacturing capabilities that had been operational and continuously refined for over a decade of strategic development. At Kepler Industrial Complex, what Federation Economic Intelligence had classified as basic resource extraction with limited processing capacity suddenly demonstrated material science that could produce advanced alloys, precision components, and sophisticated technology using techniques that exceeded Federation industrial capabilities by significant margins. The extraction equipment that had been processing raw materials revealed itself as comprehensive manufacturing infrastructure, capable of producing any required industrial output without external supply dependencies. Commander Vel Karras, observing from his flagship economic dominance, watched his economic assessment displays register production capacities that hadn't existed in Federation databases moments before. Economic Analysis Officer, report on manufacturing capabilities. Sir, I'm reading, this can't be accurate. The resource extraction facilities are showing production output equivalent to our most advanced industrial centers. The processing equipment is manufacturing components that are intelligence classified as beyond human technological capabilities. At Centauri Manufacturing Hub, the industrial facilities that had been producing civilian goods for local consumption revealed their true purpose when full production protocols activated, showing manufacturing efficiency that could produce advanced technology, precision equipment, and sophisticated materials faster than Federation economic models considered possible for developing civilizations. The research that had been conducted there for years, manufacturing optimization, resource utilization, production coordination, had all been comprehensive industrial development that served both civilian needs and economic independence requirements. Dr. Marcus Sterling, the facility's production director, transmitted a message that Velkaris would later describe as, "The moment I understood our economic assessments were completely wrong. Federation enforcement fleets, this is Centauri Manufacturing Hub. Our industrial demonstrations are now active, and our production systems are operating at full capacity. You are observing why our manufacturing development was classified as strategic rather than primitive. The demonstration at New Shanghai Industrial Center showed the Federation their most fundamental error in understanding human economic philosophy. What they had classified as a developing manufacturing colony requiring technological imports was actually a production complex that had been designed to exceed Federation industrial capabilities through innovation and efficiency rather than dependency on external trade networks. Captain Torres of the Federation enforcement vessel Economic Authority reported to Velkaris, "Sir, the manufacturing facility is producing technology that exceeds our own industrial capabilities. The same equipment we classified as primitive is manufacturing components more advanced than our own production systems. How is this even possible?" The answer was 12 years of industrial philosophy that viewed external trade dependency as a vulnerability to be eliminated rather than a relationship to be cultivated. Human manufacturing hadn't been built to integrate with galactic trade networks. It had been built to make those networks economically irrelevant through superior domestic production. But the most shocking revelation for Federation enforcement fleets came from what they'd assumed were standard logistics and transportation systems. Across all 22 systems, industrial networks that had been providing routine materials movement activated coordination capabilities that demonstrated supply chain management exceeding Federation economic science by orders of magnitude. Admiral Velkaris, his chief economic analyst, reported with barely controlled disbelief, "The transportation systems they're comprehensive logistics networks, all of them. Every materials movement system in human space appears to be part of an integrated supply coordination network that operates more efficiently than our most advanced economic management systems." Velkaris' response, recorded in his personal logs, showed his growing understanding of how completely Federation economic intelligence had failed. "Not primitive logistics, Commander. Advanced supply chain management that we've been observing for years and cataloging as basic transportation because our economic theories couldn't accommodate this level of coordination efficiency." The coordinated industrial demonstration across 22 systems created economic challenges that Federation enforcement doctrine had never anticipated. Individual enforcement fleets found themselves facing not isolated manufacturing colonies, but coordinated networks where production operations in one system supported manufacturing operations in neighboring systems. Supply chains shared resources across interstellar distances. Production systems coordinated output to maximize efficiency across the entire network. Most critically, manufacturing capabilities operated with redundancy that made disrupting human industrial output economically impossible through conventional pressure operations. Within 12 hours, Federation enforcement operations across all 22 systems had achieved no reduction in human manufacturing output while consuming resources at rates that made continued operations economically unsustainable. The Economic Authority found itself unable to interdict supply chains that operated more efficiently than Federation enforcement could track. The trade dominance suffered equipment failures trying to analyze production systems that exceeded Federation technological understanding. The market control discovered that economic pressure operations were costing more resources than human manufacturing systems consumed to maintain full output. Velkaris's economic assessment, transmitted to Federation Command, showed his complete reassessment of human industrial capabilities. Federation Economic Command, this is Admiral Velkaris. Human manufacturing capabilities exceed our economic intelligence estimates by several orders of magnitude. They have achieved comprehensive industrial independence that makes our economic pressure operations not just ineffective, but economically counterproductive for Federation resource management. The response from Federation Economic Command revealed their own strategic miscalculation. Admiral Velkaris, intelligence reports indicate you are facing standard developing manufacturing with limited technological advancement. Recommend maintaining current economic pressure approach with increased resource commitment. That disconnect between operational reality and strategic assumption was exactly what Thorne had predicted. Federation economic leadership had committed to controlling human industrial development based on intelligence estimates that were proving catastrophically wrong, but their institutional investment in economic control prevented them from acknowledging those errors. By the end of the first day, Federation enforcement operations had consumed more resources attempting economic pressure than human manufacturing systems consumed to maintain full production output across 22 systems, while demonstrating industrial capabilities that made Federation economic control economically impossible. But the most significant consequence wasn't economic, it was political. Intelligence intercepts showed that 27 of the 43 Federation species were privately questioning the economic wisdom of continued enforcement operations against a civilization whose manufacturing capabilities exceeded Federation production efficiency. Victor, Thorne transmitted from Earth Command, we're receiving economic communications from Federation member civilizations. 27 of them want to establish independent trade partnerships. They're starting to understand that cooperation with human manufacturing offers better economic returns than attempting economic control. The Federation's economic unity was fracturing under the weight of demonstrated industrial reality. Civilizations that had joined the economic alliance expecting profitable control of developing species were discovering that pressuring humanity meant accepting economic losses that far exceeded any potential gains from trade restrictions. Velkaris's final transmission of the day showed his personal evolution from confident economic enforcer to someone who understood he'd been sent to fight an economically impossible operation. Federation enforcement fleets, this is Admiral Velkaris. Human industrial capabilities are comprehensive. They have spent 12 years building manufacturing systems that exceed our production efficiency in every significant category. Economic pressure operations against these capabilities are economically counterproductive. Operation Market Force had achieved its objective. The Federation now understood exactly what 12 years of comprehensive industrial development looked like when deployed without concealment. The question was whether that understanding would lead to economic cooperation or continued attempts at control. Based on the intelligence reports coming from Federation Economic Command, we were about to find out which way their leadership would choose to go. The economic revolution started 24 hours after Operation Market Force concluded, and I watched it unfold through trade intelligence intercepts that showed the Federation's economic control system collapsing under the weight of demonstrated human industrial superiority. 27 of the 43 member species had opened independent economic negotiations with human manufacturing representatives, seeking partnership agreements rather than continued enforcement operations that were proving economically catastrophic. Thorne forwarded me the most revealing intercept, a transmission from the Hegemony Economic Council to their enforcement commanders. Admiral Velkaris's industrial assessments indicate human manufacturing capabilities exceed Federation production efficiency by margins that make economic pressure operations financially unsustainable. The hegemony is withdrawing from enforcement activities and establishing independent trade partnerships with human industrial facilities. Similar messages were flowing from the Zelani Manufacturing Consortium, the Akturi Resource Collective, the Kepler Industrial Alliance, the Centauri Trade Federation, and 22 other civilizations. Species that had joined the Federation expecting profitable control of developing manufacturing were discovering that partnering with human industry offered better economic returns than attempting to regulate civilizations with superior production capabilities. But 16 species withdrawing meant 16 species remaining, and those were the hardcore economic control factions who viewed trade partnerships as weakness and resource sharing as impossible. The Federation Core Authority, the Trade Dominance Alliance, the Economic Supremacy Coalition, and 13 other civilizations whose entire political structure was built around controlling developing species through economic dependency. These weren't governments that could admit strategic error without facing internal economic collapse. They were control hierarchies that had committed too deeply to economic domination to accept anything except total trade dependency from human systems. Velkaris found himself commanding a fragmenting economic alliance with dwindling resources and growing political pressure to achieve control objectives that were proving economically impossible. His personal logs, intercepted through trade intelligence networks, showed his evolution from confident economic enforcer to someone trapped between operational reality and political necessity. Federation Economic Command demands immediate control establishment to justify continued enforcement operations, he recorded. Human industrial capabilities make economic pressure prohibitively expensive, but withdrawal would represent economic defeat that member governments cannot survive politically. I am ordered to achieve trade dependency through any economically feasible means. That's when Velkaris made his final desperate attempt, a concentrated economic blockade of Earth's primary trade hub at Sol Station, reasoning that disrupting humanity's central coordination node would force acceptance of Federation economic oversight to restore normal trade operations. His economic logic was sound from a traditional perspective. Isolate the central economic authority in distributed manufacturing systems would lose coordination efficiency sufficient to force negotiation. The problem was that Velkaris still didn't understand how human industrial networks actually operated. I was coordinating trade defense operations from Proxima Station when Federation enforcement fleets began massing for the Sol blockade. 800 ships from the remaining 16 species concentrated for what Federation economic analysis believed would be decisive pressure against humanity's central trade coordination. Thorn, I transmitted through secure channels. They're still thinking in terms of centralized economic control systems. They think disrupting Sol Station will force us to accept Federation trade oversight to restore coordination. Thorn's response showed why he'd spent 12 years studying industrial independence. Victor, Sol Station isn't our economic control center. It's one coordination node in a distributed network. If they blockade it, the network routes around the disruption and continues operating at full efficiency. But they'll only learn that by attempting economic pressure. The blockade of Sol Station lasted 18 days and demonstrated everything wrong with Federation economic thinking. Velkaris's enforcement fleets established comprehensive interdiction, expecting to force human industrial systems into trade dependency once coordination became disrupted. What they encountered instead was a manufacturing network where every facility supported every other facility, making the isolation of any single coordination node economically irrelevant to overall system performance. When Federation forces blocked Sol Station's primary trade routes, alternate logistics networks activated from manufacturing facilities throughout human space. When they attempted to disrupt coordination communications, distributed management systems provided redundant control from positions the Federation hadn't identified as economic infrastructure. When they tried to establish economic pressure through supply interdiction, they discovered that human industrial philosophy didn't rely on centralized trade coordination. It relied on distributed self-sufficiency that made blockade operations more expensive than the economic disruption they could achieve. "This is Admiral Velkaris to all Federation enforcement units," came his transmission during the final phase of the blockade. "Human economic networks operate through distributed coordination with redundancy that makes disrupting central facilities economically ineffective. We are achieving tactical blockade objectives without strategic economic impact. The Federation lost 137 ships maintaining economic pressure that achieved no reduction in human manufacturing output or coordination efficiency. Human industrial networks continued operating at full capacity, routing coordination through alternate systems that Federation economic intelligence hadn't identified because they were integrated into manufacturing infrastructure across dozens of facilities. That's when the remaining Federation species understood what the first 27 had realized days earlier. Economic control of human industry wasn't just expensive. It was economically impossible using conventional pressure operations against manufacturing systems that had been designed specifically to eliminate trade dependency vulnerabilities. Federation Economic Command, this is Admiral Velkaris. His final enforcement transmission began. Human industrial capabilities are based on distributed manufacturing with coordination redundancy that makes establishing economic control impossible through conventional pressure operations. Continuation of enforcement activities will result in complete resource depletion without achieving trade dependency objectives. Recommend immediate cessation of economic pressure and negotiated partnership establishment. The Federation's economic surrender came through trade channels rather than enforcement communications. A formal request for partnership negotiations transmitted through the same civilizations that had been seeking independent economic agreements for weeks. The post-blockade negotiations took 4 weeks and established economic frameworks that would govern galactic trade for the next century. Federation species established partnership agreements for access to human manufacturing capabilities, recognizing superior production efficiency and comprehensive industrial independence. More importantly, they accepted formal recognition of human economic sovereignty and the legitimacy of industrial self-sufficiency as an alternative to trade dependency. But the most significant outcome wasn't the formal agreements. It was the demonstrated proof that necessity-driven innovation worked exactly as we'd planned. For 12 years, we had developed comprehensive industrial independence through strategic preparation rather than trade integration. When that independence was finally tested by civilizations who mistook self-sufficiency for primitive development, our manufacturing capabilities proved sufficient to make economic control impossible while making economic partnership inevitable. Thorne's final assessment captured the essential lesson. We didn't win because we produced more than the Federation, Victor. We won because we produced better. 12 years of necessity-driven innovation, comprehensive self-sufficiency, and distributed coordination defeated economic pressure from 43 civilizations because independence beats dependency every time. Standing in my office at Proxima Station, watching new partnership agreements flow in from civilizations that had weeks earlier been attempting economic control, I understood something fundamental about the nature of economic freedom that no trade school had ever taught me. Economic independence isn't the absence of trade, it's the presence of capabilities sufficient to make trade voluntary rather than necessary. Our industrial development had worked for 12 years, not because it prevented economic relationships, but because it made economic manipulation economically impossible for anyone to attempt successfully. The Federation had asked if we were serious about industrial independence. We'd shown them that we were serious enough about economic freedom to spend 12 years building manufacturing capabilities that made their control systems irrelevant to our prosperity. True economic freedom comes from building what you need rather than depending on what others control. The Federation learned that lesson at the cost of over 200 ships and the economic stability of 16 governments that had built their prosperity on controlling rather than cooperating. We learned it was a lesson worth teaching through 12 years of comprehensive preparation and one very expensive demonstration.